You mentioned, you used a term, people of color. So who are not the people of color?
Well, I would say white people are not people of color.
So you're saying that it's impossible for a black to be racist?
Yes.
How many of us would keep using this word, racism, if we found out that to a good many people it can only really mean one thing: a bad white person?
Have I been a racist? I like to think not, and I hope not.
I think that all of us growing up in this culture and in this life are a little bit racist. Am I aware of my racism? Yeah. I'm aware of my racism. Aware a lot of people I don't think are.
The conflict is you don't want to be a racist because you're black.
Are you a racist?
No, not at all. At least that I know.
Have you ever been a racist yourself?
No.
Never been?
No.
On a 1 to 10, 10 being a lot, and 1 being a little, how much racism is there in America today?
I'd say about a 9.
About a 9. So you feel racism is just everywhere?
Yeah, I believe it is, but I mean, I haven't experienced it myself.
At one point in any conversation about race, one issue must be addressed, and it is a touchy one. But the answer to this question is paramount if we want our conversation to be objective.
America never was a white nation.
Never?
Never. It was never a white nation.
If you want to get to whose country it was the Native Americans. Caucasians came and took that land from them.
Europeans. Europeans stole their land.
Matter of fact, this isn't even their country. They came and took a country, you know, from people that opened their arms to them with love, and they deceived them.
The American Indians were oppressed and slaughtered in droves by the Europeans.
They were here. This was their land. I'm not sure how they got here or if they fought anyone.
What would you say to somebody who said every founding citizen of the United States of America was white?
I think that's a tough one.
What would you call a nation where every single citizen was white and where immigration was restricted to white Christians? Would that be a white nation? Why does this matter? Are we a white nation any longer? Once again, because of the disconnect, because of the anti-white bias that lies within the conventional wisdom on racism. Once again, if you accept the fact that America was founded as a white nation, then you must also accept the fact that her founding principles, which separate America from all other nations, were also developed by white men, not by a multicultural rainbow. And this fact drives the believers crazy. You see, it's okay to blame whites as a race for fuzzy historical discriminations, but it's a cardinal sin to credit whites as a race with anything.
Your forefathers came over and they did their dirty deed and took most of the land, deceived most of the people, and the rest they killed.
Now this is fascinating. Paul has absolutely no problem saying to my face, rather forcefully, that my forefathers came here and did their dirty deed. Now, the fact that he's completely wrong is so easily overlooked by today's believers, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But what is telling is that Paul has absolutely no problem with assigning collective racial guilt to all white people for presumably the way the American colonists treated the Indians. Can you see the contradiction? It's acceptable today to assign collective racial guilt to all whites for the actions of a minute fraction of them hundreds of years ago. Would it be acceptable today to assign collective racial guilt to any other races, for example, to blacks, let's say for the crimes that they themselves committed in this decade alone? Well, no, that would be racism. Get the picture? And just to clarify, I can trace my earliest ancestors here in America to the 1870s, after our Civil War. No forefather of mine ever killed an Indian or owned another human being, ever. And I'll suggest that there's a large group of white Americans just like me in that respect. We have no blood relatives that ever practiced ethnic cleansing or slavery, yet so many seek to blame us for it. They seek to blame us for crimes our forefathers never even committed, and yet excuse and ignore other racial groups where crime is rampant today. Huh? But I digress. When we talk about Europeans stealing the Indians' land, I have to ask, which Indians are we talking about? White people aren't the only people who killed folks for their land.
They didn't fight among each other, tribes?
Oh, amongst each other, yes.
Did they ever try to wipe out whole other tribes?
I'm pretty sure they did.
The American Indians did fight amongst themselves.
Did they ever commit genocide amongst themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah, there were warring nations and there were peaceful nations.
It wasn't an equal playing field. And what I mean by that is, so when the Indians were conflicting with each other, when the tribes were conflicting with each other, they had similar ways of fighting each other. Bows and arrows, spears, fighting, rocks, you know, whatever. And then white folks came across and they had different types of technology.
Do I think that Indians killed each other for land before they arrived? I believe that, yes, that the different tribes fought back and forth. But it's different, and I'm trying to explain how it's different.
Here's the difference. Believers apply one set of standards to whites and another set of standards to everyone else.
Isn't what the Caucasians did to the Indians the same things what the Indians did themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
They gave them a taste of their own medicine.
Look, every racial group, ethnic group, just about any other group you can think of today has advocates. Every group, that is, except white people. Don't believe me? Go to any university today and count the classes and approved organizations dedicated to the advancement of specific races or ethnic groups. You'll find thousands, each dedicated to their own race, except, that is, any groups dedicated to white advocacy. There are none. And that's a major disconnect. I mean, let's break it down. Hispanics can be pro-Hispanic without being anti-anybody. Jews can be pro-Jewish without being anti-anybody. Blacks can be pro-black without being anti-anybody. But with whites, it's different. White people cannot be pro-white without being anti-everybody else. And that's a large disconnect. Can you see why I'm leery of the conventional wisdom on racism? The only positions made available to white people on the subject of our own race is indifference or supremacy. So are there consequences to all these disconnects? How would the fact that all races are allowed advocates except whites manifest itself over time?
Do I think white people will become a minority? When I say that, I include particularly the Hispanic population. And yet I'm not, they're really, as I understand it, that's not really a race. So when we talk technically race, that's wrong. It's just that Hispanic people are a protected class. Do I think white nationalists have a point in saying enough is enough when whites are now at 66%, when our founding fathers were at 100%? I guess I don't. I don't think they have a point. I don't appreciate those organizations. But to some extent, I guess I can appreciate maybe the people's sense of loss.
But in fact, white folks are starting to be a minority now.
You think white people like that?
Yeah, but seem like it's more Mexicans than white folks out here.
Just maybe someday it just means a completely blended group of people that nobody will be able to figure out what anybody is anymore.
Is that a good thing?
I think that's a great thing.
I think we are yellowing America and everybody's blending, and that, I think that's a good thing.